Hey guys, tonight we curl up inside a place no one in their right mind would call cozy, a medieval peasant's hut. Not a castle, not a manor, not even a proper cottage. Just four crooked walls, a slumped roof, and a dirt floor that absorbs every secret, every spill, every sigh from the centuries that passed before you. You probably imagine something quaint, like a fairy tale cabin with a warm fire and rustic charm. But that's the illusion of distance romanticism that only exists in books. The real hut is smaller than your garage, smells like old onions and wet sheep, and if the wind is wrong, it howls like it's warning you to leave. What no one tells you is this: the peasant didn't just live here, they slept here, they dreamed here, they died here. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is right now. I love seeing your sleepy corners of the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step inside, careful not to trip over the uneven threshold, a sagging timber whose bark has long since surrendered to rot. The smell hits first, not strong, not sudden, just a low, stale blend of sweat, soil, and survival. You don't walk into the past, you sink into it. Your foot presses into the floor and it doesn't push back, because it's not really a floor, it's dirt. Just packed earth, flattened by 100,000 feet trudging through the same patch of space, softened in places by spilled broth and harder in others by old ash or forgotten bones. If you drop something on it, you might never find it again. The soil has a habit of keeping things, coins, teeth, secrets. You shuffle forward, and there's a strange comfort in how the cold seeps through the soles of your feet, like the floor is trying to remind you this is where you'll end up eventually. So get used to it. Most peasants didn't own beds. That was a luxury, like reading or not dying from soup. What you get is straw, if you're lucky, spread loosely on the ground in the corner farthest from the door. Why that corner? Because that's where the wind leaks in the least. And also, if something breaks in, it might eat the goat before it eats you. That's the kind of strategy sleep requires here. You aren't tucking yourself in to dream, you're bracing yourself against the long darkness until morning. And you're not alone. The rest of the family is here too. 5, 6, maybe 7 people in one room, sleeping in shifts or side by side, pressed close enough to feel each other's breath in the cold. If you roll over, you might end up with someone's foot in your face. Or a piglet. Yes, sometimes animals slept inside too. Not out of sentimentality, but warmth. The goat's body heat is valuable in winter, and frankly, she's quieter than Uncle Ewan. Historians still argue whether peasants saw their huts as homes or just necessary shelters. Some say these places were symbols of resilience. Others say they were more like traps with thatched roofs. What's certain is that everything about the hut was designed for function, not comfort. The walls are wattle and daub sticks woven together and smeared with a delightful mix of mud, straw, and dung. It keeps some of the rain out and most of the warmth in, but not all. On damp nights, the walls sweat. You'll feel it against your elbow if you sleep too close. You inch toward the straw bedding. If it's recently replaced, it smells faintly of sun and weeds. If it's not, well, you'll notice, because straw absorbs more than heat. It holds on to moisture, odor, and whatever else your bladder contributed in the night. There's no mattress to flip, no linen to change. You just shake it out once in a while and keep using it until it disintegrates. The concept of hygiene is relative. Soap is rare. Water is fetched by bucket. You might bathe twice a year if no one dies and freeze up a tub. So yes, the floor's dirt, but it's not clean dirt. You lie down, and the silence isn't silent. There's the soft crunch of straw under your shoulder blades, the shuffle of someone repositioning nearby, the occasional snort from a dreaming cow. You try to ignore the itch forming behind your knee. You hope it's just a scratch, but deep down, you know it's probably something living. Lice are common, fleas are expected, bedbugs are practically roommates. There's a reason people sleep fully clothed. Layers protect you from more than cold. You shift your head to the side and stare at the underside of the roof. The thatch is uneven, patched in places with moss, in others with hope. It's thick, sure, but not impenetrable. Rain seeps through during storms, bugs make homes inside it, and birds sometimes nest above without asking. If they're feeling generous, they'll sing you to sleep. If not, they'll drop something else. The air smells of smoke, but not from a cozy fireplace. There is no chimney, just a hole in the roof and a fire pit in the center of the room. So all the smoke rises, then lingers, then clings. Your eyes water, your throat scratches, and still, it's better than freezing. You're grateful. That's the irony. You're suffering, but you're still one of the lucky ones, because you have a hut. Some people sleep outside, or under carts, or with nothing but a cloak and a prayer. You close your eyes. The ground is cold. Your knees ache. You already missed the feeling of privacy, of choice, of being alone in the dark. Here, the dark is crowded, and you realize something soft and horrible. This isn't temporary. This is life. This is normal. This is the floor you'll rise from every morning if you rise at all. You listen to the breathing around you, familiar, fragile, all of it layered atop this floor, night after night, until someone doesn't wake up. And then the floor receives something new, another secret, another weight. You breathe shallowly, afraid to disturb the dust. It floats visibly in the low candlelight, swirling like ancient thoughts. Nothing moves fast here, not the smoke, not the days, not your pulse. You try to sleep, not because it's restful, but because what else is there to do? The roof groans above you like it remembers every winter that nearly brought it down, thatched with bundles of straw, reeds, and whatever else could be yanked from the earth. It's not built for beauty or permanence. It's meant to survive, barely, and that's exactly what it does, just barely. Every gust of wind turns the ceiling into a living thing, hissing, creaking, whispering with the breath of the outside world. You lie there beneath it, watching as a spider lowers itself with perfect grace toward your face, and you realize there's no real separation between inside and out. If it rains hard, the drips won't be gentle. They'll find the holes, trickle through the packed roof, and plop onto your forehead like the hut itself is trying to wake you. Even worse is when it doesn't rain, but the thatch still leaks. Moisture doesn't need permission here. It creeps in, quietly, during the night, and softens everything you thought was dry. You roll over, only to find your shoulder pressed into a soggy patch of straw. You mutter, maybe curse a little under your breath, but that's just how it is. Medieval sleep is less about comfort and more about compromise. Historians still argue whether thatch was ever truly waterproof, or just slightly less awful than open air. Some say good thatching lasted 20 years. Others say the rats and birds destroyed it in 3. What they agree on is that the ceiling is rarely your friend, especially when things start to fall from it. Small things, black things, things with claws or too many legs. Birds nest between the layers, sure, but so do insects, lice, fleas, even wasps, in the wrong season. And in the wrong mood, the entire roof can hum at night. You're supposed to just ignore that, sleep through it, pretend that the vibrating sound isn't some kind of ancient curse whispering down through the straw. You squeeze your eyes shut, try to focus on something else, but the sounds keep coming. You hear a scurrying overhead, then a soft thud. Something just fell out of the thatch onto the floor. Maybe a twig, maybe something with teeth. You hope it's not climbing into your blankets. The roof, like the rest of the hut, is not ornamental. It's a makeshift skin stitched over a skeleton of timber, its joints lashed with vines and prayer, and it shifts when it's tired. Whole patches can sag after storms. If you're tall, you might wake up with the ceiling brushing your hair. If you're unlucky, a chunk of straw might collapse directly onto your face. And if it's the dead of winter, that means you've just been dusted in the cold exhale of 100 long-gone seasons. The roof always remembers more than you do. Some say the thatch traps voices, that it catches the last sighs of the people who lived here before. Maybe that's why, when you're half asleep, you think you hear murmuring, not from the people beside you, not from the wind, but from above. As though the roof is rehearsing a memory it can't quite let go. You lie still, too tired to be scared, but not too tired to listen. The ceiling's close enough to touch, and you start to see patterns in it. Weaving, repetition, places where the stalks cross too perfectly to be random. That's how your brain passes the time here, by turning straw into stories. Because the stories distract you from the drip in the corner, from the scratch at the wall, from the way the air smells faintly of mildew and something dying slowly. You wonder how many people were born under this roof, and how many didn't make it past their first frost. Because huts weren't just homes, they were also delivery rooms, sick beds, and occasionally tombs, and always sleep chambers. You'd think there would be more care put into the ceiling when it watches you so closely, but there isn't. You're lying under bundles of dried grass tied together with twine and hope. And yes, it might keep you mostly dry, but it also keeps in the cold. The warmth from the fire rises, but the smoke rises faster, and the thatch traps both. That's why everything in the room smells vaguely like wet wool, burnt cabbage, and a hint of soot. You pull your tunic closer to your face, trying to block the stench, but it clings to your sleeves. Every fiber has absorbed 1,000 nights of smoke, sweat, and slow-baked human scent. In modern life, people talk about cedarwood candles and earthy fragrances. This is the original version, raw, unfiltered, deeply honest. No perfume, no filter, just medieval musk. The ceiling sighs again as another gust presses against the outside. There's no insulation, just straw, mud, and a prayer. You wonder if the stars are out tonight, but you wouldn't be able to tell. The smoke hole was covered last month with a slab of wood to keep the snow from drifting in, which means there's no light, not even a moonbeam. Just the flicker of the low fire and the deep, swallowing dark. It's hard to know if it's midnight or almost dawn. Time doesn't work properly inside the hut. It folds, it stretches, the air feels thicker than it should. You try to sleep again, try to will your mind into a quiet place, but a drop of water lands on your lip, icy and deliberate. The roof, once again, reminds you it is not a ceiling, it's an accomplice to the weather. You groan softly and shift your position. Your back finds a new curve in the floor. Your head tilts just enough to avoid the drip. It's a small win, but you take it. That's the rhythm of sleep here. Endure, adjust, repeat. The thatch above you has been repaired a dozen times. You can tell by the mismatched layers, some straw is golden, some gray, some moldy. A quilt made of decaying harvests, and every layer tells a story. Someone climbed up there, in the cold, with numb fingers, to patch the holes using tools made of bone and twine. That someone probably sneezed black soot for days afterward. But the roof got patched, because it had to be. Because no one wants to sleep beneath the sky in winter. Even if the sky is only one storm away from crashing through, you start to drift. Finally, the fire crackles weakly, the wind softens, the spider's gone. Maybe back to its web, maybe into your blanket. You don't care. You're too tired. You let the roof hold its breath above you and hope it doesn't exhale too heavily in the night. Because the last thing you want is to wake up buried in straw, wet from the drip, and face to face with whatever lies just out of sight. The roof is there, always hovering like a thought you can't shake. A weight you don't quite feel until it shifts. You sleep beneath it, not with trust, but with acceptance. Because this is your lot. And tonight, like every night, you make peace with the ceiling that leaks and creaks and keeps you, just barely, from the rain. You hear it before you see it, tiny feet skittering across the floorboards, or rather, the floor dirt. Because let's be honest, no plank has ever graced this hut. It's a quick, practiced sound, like something that's lived here longer than you have, knows every hollow in the wall, every inch of loosened daub, every bit of dropped food hidden under the straw. You freeze, hoping it goes the other way, but it doesn't. It moves closer, emboldened by darkness and the quiet stillness of human bodies pretending to sleep. Your skin crawls not from imagination, but from experience. You know what it is. Rats, mice, if you're lucky. They don't come because you're messy. They come because they always come. Because the walls are thin, the food is sparse, and winter drives all creatures indoors. Especially the ones with sharp teeth and no manners. And it's not just the rats. You hear buzzing near your ear, fleeting, high-pitched. A mosquito's lullaby. It weaves through the air, seeking flesh and blood and dreams to interrupt. You swat half-heartedly, but you're too tired to care, too used to it. You expect it. You expect all of it, the beetles that nest in your blanket folds, the centipedes that parade through your straw pillow, the lice that build empires behind your ears. The hut is a shared space, not just with family, but with everything small, tenacious, and nocturnal. Historians still argue whether the infestation levels in peasant huts were exaggerated in later accounts, or if they were simply underreported by those too accustomed to complain. But if the past is any clue, your night visitors are the true rulers of the room. There's no pest control, no traps, just the occasional cat, if you're blessed, or more often, the loud stomping of feet and the whispered hopes that whatever it was doesn't come back tonight. You pull the blanket over your head, but it doesn't help. The fabric is rough, homespun, barely thicker than a scarf. Cold still seeps in, and the mice can chew right through it anyway. At least it's not crawling this moment. You whisper a small, bitter joke into the darkness. Good night, sweet pests. No one laughs, but maybe the fleas chuckle to themselves. You itch again, not in one spot, but all over. A creeping discomfort that turns sleep into a slow negotiation. You scratch without thinking, nails catching on dried skin, dirt under your fingers. You'll regret that in the morning. The scratches will sting, but for now, it's a ritual. Just another part of surviving the night. You try to ignore the smell. You try harder to ignore the knowledge that some of that smell is you, and the rest, the goat in the corner, the bucket near the door, the mold in the thatch, the fermented leftovers of a long-dead dinner buried somewhere beneath your bed of straw. This place doesn't breathe, it festers. But you breathe anyway, because what else can you do? It's not deadly, not immediately. You'll live, probably, maybe, unless one of these rats carries something worse than a sharp bite. People don't talk about the fear. They act like peasants were numb to it. But the truth is, they just got good at muting it. You sleep in a room with shadows you never name. Things that scurry, twitch, or blink from the cracks in the daub. And sometimes, you swear, you see eyes gleaming back at you. Not animal, not quite human, just present. The stories told around fires weren't all fantasy. Some of them felt too specific. And when your cousin goes missing in the night, and all you find is a hole dug deep into the mud beside the wall, you start to wonder, but you don't say it aloud. You never say it aloud. There's no such thing as privacy here, not even for your thoughts. The hut listens. It always listens. The goat stirs in her sleep, grumbles, then goes still. That's your cue to lie back down. You were up too long. The movement will attract attention. Mice are brave when you're still, cautious when you stir. You want to be left alone tonight. You stretch your legs, shift your hips, find a spot on the dirt that isn't too lumpy. It's a small victory. You settle back in, but then, from the wall, comes a noise you've heard before. A long, slow creak. Not wood, not weather, something else. Something deliberate. The wind doesn't creak like that. You hold your breath. Everyone else seems to sleep through it. Or maybe they're pretending. Maybe they've learned to be still when the sound comes. You picture a raccoon, maybe a badger, some night animal testing the walls again. But the hut groans, as if something pressed against it, then stops, and all goes still again. The quiet is worse than the noise. It makes your imagination louder. The straw above you crackles. A rat, perhaps, or something larger. You don't want to know. You close your eyes, not to sleep, but to hide. This is what rest looks like now. Not surrender, but a strategy. Not peace, but pause. You breathe through your nose, slowly, deliberately, and for a moment, the scuttling stops. A silence settles over the room like a wool blanket, scratchy, suffocating, but warm in its way. You cling to that moment, because that's all you get. The bugs will be back. So will the rodents. So will the things you can't name. But right now, there's a lull, a pause in the scratching, the squeaking, the buzzing. And you let that silence wash over you, knowing it won't last. Knowing that, even in sleep, you're sharing space with too many lives, too many limbs, and far too many tiny mouths. You shift again, Just a little. Not too much. You don't want to provoke anything. Your blanket rustles, and something tiny darts from its folds and disappears under the straw. You don't scream. You don't flinch. You just acknowledge it silently. Another uninvited guest has checked in. You'll give them a name tomorrow. Maybe. For now. It's just easier to pretend they're part of the furniture, part of the floor, part of the life you didn't choose, but now endure. The night stretches on. You begin to drift, but not in comfort, in exhaustion, and just before you slip into that shallow sleep that's never quite enough, you mutter to no one in particular, "Remind me again why we call this shelter." No one answers, but somewhere in the dark, the walls shift like they're laughing softly, or listening. The fire should offer comfort, but it doesn't. Not in this place. It smolders low in the center of the hut. More smoke than flame, barely more heat than breath. You lie there with your eyes half open, half stung, watching the lazy trail of smoke curl upward like it's too tired to leave. There's no chimney, no stone hearth, just a blackened pit scraped into the dirt, circled with rocks that were once white but now wear soot like war paint. You think about how fire, in stories, is meant to be warmth, protection, even magic. Here, it's something else. It's necessary, yes, but it's also moody and treacherous. Too much wood and the room fills with smoke so thick you gag. Too little, and you'll wake with frostbitten toes. There's no winning. The fire doesn't warm the room. It smokes it into submission. Your clothes, your blanket, your hair, everything stinks like burnt peat and desperation. Some nights, it's so thick the animals cough, the goat wheezes, the baby cries. You blink back tears and pretend it's from the heat. Historians still argue whether peasant huts were deliberately smoky to keep pests away, or if people simply tolerated it because they had no other option. Either way, you're living in a cloud, and not the heavenly kind. Your chest aches slightly, not enough to worry, but enough to notice. You roll onto your side to avoid the direct path of the smoke, but it follows anyway. It always does. Like it knows you're weak tonight. You'd get up and open a window if windows existed. Instead, there's a tiny slit carved near the roof, more for letting demons escape than fresh air, if the superstitions are to be believed. And even that's covered with cloth in winter. You wonder how much of your life you'll spend breathing this air. Not just tonight, but every night. The smoke clings to your lungs like a secret. It'll stay there, long after the fire burns out. You hear someone across the room stir, coughing into their arm. That's normal. Everyone coughs. Old people, babies, even the dog when he used to be alive. The cough doesn't mean anything until it does, until it lingers, until it turns wet and rattling and someone starts looking at the floor like it might need to hold a new body soon. But for now, it's just a noise in the night, one of many. You focus on the fire, it dances without joy, a little orange twitch in the dark, too tired to crackle. The wood's damp again. It hisses instead of burns. You hear it whimper, like a trapped animal. You try not to breathe too deeply. You know the smoke makes it worse. Your eyes sting and water, not from sadness, though you wouldn't blame them if they did. Just irritation. Just the everyday battle between lungs and living. The roof above traps it all. You look up and see the smoke slither into the thatch, hiding, nesting. That's part of why the hut smells so deeply. The straw overhead remembers every fire, every bad stew, every winter when the damp wouldn't go away. You remember once, long ago, someone told you fire was cleansing. You think maybe they lived in a castle, because here, fire is compromise. It cooks your food, yes, but it also blinds you, suffocates you, and sometimes burns down your entire life if you nod off too deeply. It's not sacred, it's suspicious. You glance at the embers again, still glowing, barely. You're too tired to feed it. Let someone else rise and poke at it with the iron rod. The one with the twisted handle and the scorch marks no one wants to talk about. You close your eyes. The flicker still dances on your eyelids. You've stared into fire so many nights that now, even with your eyes closed, the afterglow stays. You see it everywhere. in your dreams, in the corners of your vision. You sometimes wonder if you'll wake up on fire, or if you won't wake up at all. Fire doesn't wait for consent. It just spreads. It doesn't care that your family is poor, that you saved the biggest log for Sunday, that you said a little prayer before lighting it. You've seen it happen in other huts, just one gust of wind, one pop of ember, and suddenly everything is glowing for the wrong reason. But still, you need it, because the night is colder without it, and more than the cold. It's the silence you fear. The silence without fire is deeper, more judgmental. It makes the hut feel dead. The fire, even a sickly one, proves you're still trying, that someone is awake, that someone remembers what life is supposed to be like. You let your fingers drift toward the warmth, but it doesn't reach you. Not from across the room. The heat from this kind of fire doesn't travel. It just clings to its own space like a miser. You pull the blanket tighter. It's damp at the edges. Everything is, even the firewood, stored under the bench in the corner, too close to the ground. It never really dries. You know you'll be coughing in the morning. You always do. But you also know you'll light it again tomorrow. Because what else is there? You lie still, and somewhere in the corner, the pot you left hanging over the fire shifts. It creaks as it swings slightly, the iron hook groaning against the beam. You hope it doesn't fall. It's your only pot. And if it spills tonight, no one's getting soup tomorrow. You feel the weight of that thought settle into your bones. Every object in the hut has meaning. Every coal, every stick, every rag. Nothing is just stuff. It's all survival. You listen to the fire and it sounds tired, like it wants to sleep too, but you can't let it, because if it dies, the smoke will fade, and with it, the weak illusion of warmth. You hear someone snore, then cough again, then turn. The rustling of straw fills the room like static. You close your eyes again. You let the fire burn low. You trust that it won't betray you tonight, just tonight. You won't ask for more, because asking too much of fire is how you get burned. You sigh into the smoky dark, and you try not to think about the fact that the warmth never really reaches you, just the smoke. It's hard to say where the floor ends and the bedding begins. Beneath you, the straw is flattened in patches and oddly clumpy in others, like someone's been rearranging it in their sleep, or something else has made a nest where your head now rests. It doesn't cradle you. It prickles, scratches, presses back in 1,000 tiny ways. You shift again, carefully, because moving too fast sends sharp stalks poking into your neck or wrists or behind your knees. This is your mattress straw that's already been slept on for weeks, maybe months, maybe by multiple generations. No linens, no padding, just straw and a prayer. You remind yourself not to dig too deep into it, because buried in this straw are things you'd rather not touch. A hardened crust of spilled stew, a crustier part that wasn't stew, maybe a flattened beetle, maybe more. Historians still argue whether peasants refreshed their bedding seasonally, or just kept layering new straw over the old, until it resembled compost more than cushion. Either way, you're lying on a blend of memory and microbial life, and it smells like it. Not foul enough to gag, but persistent. Like something just a bit too ripe, too close, too human. You pull your blanket tighter, knowing full well it's made from the same woolen roughness as the shirt that chafes your back. Scratchy, heavy, and always slightly damp from the hut's eternal condensation. Beneath you, the straw rustles not dramatically, but just enough to remind you that something else might be in there. Mice, bugs, or something nameless and harmless. Like your own fear pretending to have legs. You try to ignore the sensation of movement just past your hip. Could be your imagination. Could be something you don't want to name. In the dark, it's better not to know. You shift again. Your knees find a cold patch in the dirt beneath the straw and ache instantly. There's no avoiding it. The cold seeps up through the floor like breath from the underworld. You adjust again, seeking that mythical soft spot that might not exist. People think of beds as safe places, but here, your straw mat isn't safe. It's simply the least uncomfortable option available. And comfort. That's a luxury word, one that doesn't belong in this hut. You lie on your side, arms pulled tight to your chest, knees curled slightly, not because it's cozy, but because it reduces the surface area exposed to the chill. You're not stretching out in restful repose. You're bracing. That's the posture of sleep here. Not surrender, endurance. And the worst part, you're getting used to it. That thought is somehow more depressing than the straw, that your body now knows how to position itself to avoid the most painful roots and pebbles, that your skin has adapted to the coarse weave of the blanket, that you've learned to recognize what kind of itch means a flea, and what kind just means you're still alive. You press your face deeper into the straw. It smells like last week's rain and sweat, maybe your own, maybe someone else's. Straw holds memories, and it doesn't discriminate. You remember once, as a child, your hand brushing something soft in the straw, not a bug, not a rat, just a dead bird, small and still. It must have fallen from the roof, or maybe it was tucked in to ward off something. People have strange ideas about protection in these parts. You screamed. Your mother didn't. She just tossed it out the door and muttered about omens. The straw was rearranged, and that was that. That's the thing about straw bedding, it isn't just for sleep. It's also a hiding place, a garbage dump, a graveyard, and every time you lie down with history. You turn your head again, and a piece of hay lodges itself just beneath your collar. It itches like a curse. You reach back and tug it free, adding it to the pile near your head where other stalks have been discarded, broken, bent, or simply too intrusive to keep. You'd toss the whole pile if you could. Start fresh. But fresh straw isn't easy to come by. Not in winter. Not when the animals need it more. So, you make do. You always make do. The phrase rolls around your mind like a chant, make do. Lie down. Wake up. Repeat. Sleep isn't escape here. It's a waiting room. You pull the blanket higher over your shoulder, feel the frayed edge brush your cheek, and stare into the darkness. Your eyes adjust. But there's not much to see, just the vague outline of beams above you, and the paler patch where the smoke hole used to be. It's been covered now, against the cold, so the smoke pools lower, sinks into the straw, gives everything a dusky film that clings to your skin. Your lips taste like ash. You wipe them on your sleeve, knowing the sleeve tastes worse. Beneath you, the straw whispers again, just a twitch, just a shift. You pretend it's the wind, even though there's no wind down there. You feel a slow dread creep through your bones, not from fear, but from the knowledge that this is the best it gets, that this straw bed, itchy and damp and vaguely alive, is what stands between you and the frozen ground. You close your eyes. You count backwards from 10, not to fall asleep, but to forget where you are. For a moment, it works. You're in a bed, a real one, with sheets, with warmth, and then you shift, and a straw point jabs your thigh, and the spell breaks. You're back. You always come back. And still, despite it all, your body begins to soften, not because it's comfortable, but because exhaustion is stronger than discomfort. Your muscles give up. Your mind quiets. You let the straw hold you, prickle you, mark you, and you drift not into dreams, but into stillness, into the pause that passes for rest in a world that never lets go. Something is crawling on your ankle. You don't move. You've learned not to react too quickly, because startling the creatures that live in your bedding only makes them panic, and when they panic, they bite. It could be a flea. It could be a louse. It could be one of those long-legged things that wander through straw like drunk little skeletons. You wait for it to pass, counting your breath. 1, 2, 3. It stops. You still don't move. That's sleep here. Carefully calculated stillness, punctuated by tiny invasions. You scratch the itch later, gently, knowing that underneath your skin there might be more visitors, burrowing, laying eggs, or just sipping. You've tried to stay clean. You've scrubbed your legs with soap root and cold water hauled from the stream. You've dried your tunic in the sun when it's not raining. But the fleas always win. They live in the cracks of the walls, in the straw, in the seams of your sleeves. They outnumber you. You feel them watching, waiting, and when the fire dies down and the hut grows quiet, they feast. You try to sleep, but the bites keep you tethered to your body. They itch in waves, not everywhere, but in too many places at once. You scratch one, then another, then try to lie still and ignore the rest. But the moment you stop, they start again. This is not insomnia. This is survival. Your body is no longer your own. It's a banquet, a quiet, unwilling sacrifice to the needs of smaller creatures. And the worst part, you're used to it. Everyone is. Your father scratches in his sleep like it's part of breathing. Your sister has scars on her ankles from scratching too hard. Your neighbor once burned his leggings trying to cook the lice out of them. Some say you can drown them in vinegar or ash water. Others say nothing helps. Historians still argue whether medieval people truly understood the role these insects played in spreading disease, or whether they just thought bad smells and sin were to blame. But everyone knew one thing: the itching never stopped. You lie there, eyes open in the dark, wondering which parts of you will bleed by morning. You shift your foot and feel something pop. Not painful, just another welt breaking open. You'll wake with a stain on your tunic and another reason not to look too closely at your blanket. It smells faintly of sheep, but stronger of skin. Your own and everyone else's, because you share this blanket, not just now, but always. Your brother used it before you. Your cousin borrowed it when she was sick. And once, you wrapped the dog in it when he was dying. You still think about that sometimes, late at night, when the fleas are biting and the smoke is thin. You think about how he whimpered, how his eyes glazed, how his breath stilled under the weight of this same cloth. And then you fold that thought away, like the memory it is. Because here, death isn't something you visit in dreams. It's something you sleep beside. And the fleas don't care whose blood they drink. You scratch again, this time at your neck. You feel a tiny lump, familiar, tender, maybe infected. You don't panic. You just note it. Another reminder that your body is a battlefield, and no one's winning. You've tried herbs, pennyroyal, lavender when you can steal it from the monastery garden, but it never lasts. The fleas always return. They live longer than memory. You lie back and let them, because you're too tired to fight, because you know they're part of the night now, part of the rhythm. You've even named one. You think he lives under your left knee. You call him Harold. He's punctual, every night, right before you drift off. A bite, a twitch, a reminder that you are not alone. You should hate him, but honestly, it's comforting. Familiar pain is easier to endure. You try to count the welts, 1 on your wrist, 2 behind your ear, 3 near your belly. You lose track after 7. It doesn't matter. They all blur together by morning. You'll scratch in your sleep, you'll bleed, you'll wake sticky, and still, the day will begin, as if none of it happened, as if the night didn't feed on you. You roll onto your stomach, hoping to confuse them, change the battlefield, but they adapt faster than you. Within minutes, they've found new territory, the back of your neck, the crease behind your knee. You sigh and bury your face in the straw. It pricks you back. Everything does. You think of castles, of feather beds, of silken sheets and perfumed hair, not because you expect them, just because you've seen a tapestry once. A knight kissing a lady in a golden room. She didn't itch. She didn't bleed. She didn't share her bed with Harold. You smile into the straw, bitterly. That tapestry was probably woven by someone like you. Someone scratching, squinting, stitching dreams they'd never touch. You wonder if they had fleas too. Probably. Everyone did. Except maybe the saints or the dead. You feel something bite again. This time on your elbow, sharp, mean. You slap it hard, and there's a crunch. You wince. That was probably real. You roll over and flick something off your sleeve. You don't look too closely. No one does. The hut is quiet again. Just the occasional cough. The slow groan of the roof settling. The whisper of something dragging itself across the wall. The fleas aren't loud, but they don't need to be. Their kingdom is built on persistence, and you are their chosen throne. You scratch again, gently, and let the night continue. You'd think sleep would offer some small sliver of privacy, but it doesn't. Not here. Not in a one-room hut where the walls barely stand, and the air carries every breath to everyone else. You shift on your straw pile and bump a foot that isn't yours. Maybe your sister's, maybe your grandmother's, maybe the baby, who's now curled at your side like a restless sack of potatoes with tiny fists. There's no separation here. No bedroom, no curtain, no corner truly your own. You sleep in a row, in a pile, in a tangled cluster of limbs and elbows and breath. Someone is always snoring. Someone is always grinding their teeth. And someone, you don't know who, keeps letting out a high-pitched whistle through their nose every 10 seconds. You want to nudge them? You want to crawl outside, but it's cold. And the floor outside is just as unforgiving as the one you're already on. So, you stay, pressed in with the rest. A human loaf of bodies baked slowly by shared exhaustion. There's a goat at your feet. You didn't invite her, but she came anyway. The family brings her in on colder nights. She's worth more alive and warm than dead and frozen. She smells like hay and something else you try not to identify. She shifts in her sleep and lets out a soft, goaty bleat. You pretend not to hear. You don't want to encourage her. Her warmth is helpful, sure, but she has a tendency to kick hard, and not always in her sleep. There's a chicken in here, too, perched somewhere near the bench. She clucks occasionally, dreaming perhaps of escape or of being something other than food. The baby starts to cry soft at first, then louder. Your mother hushes her quickly, cradling her against her chest and rocking her in place without rising. No one rises, not for crying, not for groaning. You just adjust. It's easier. You sleep light, not from choice, but necessity. Heavy sleep here is dangerous. You could miss something. A fire spark, a storm leak, a scream, or the silence after a scream. You listen to the baby's breathing slow again. Your mother's arms never stop moving. Rock, shift, pat. In the dark. She's a rhythm, not a person. That's how most people become at night, just shapes, heat sources, breathing patterns. Historians still argue whether medieval families felt closer because of these shared sleeping arrangements, or if it bred quiet resentments and blurred identities. There's no clear answer. But what's clear is that you're never alone. Not for a moment. Even in dreams. Someone else is coughing nearby, or shifting, or groaning softly in their sleep. The old man by the wall talks when he dreams, words in another tongue. He came from the north once, or maybe from the forest. No one really knows, but he sleeps beside you now, and sometimes he mutters names no one recognizes. You wish he'd stop, not because it scares you, but because it reminds you that even strangers carry memories, and in this hut, there's nowhere to put them but the shared air. You roll slightly, trying not to wake your brother. His breath smells like cabbage and tooth decay. It drifts across your cheek like a curse. You press your face into the blanket to escape it. The goat lets out another sigh. You hope she's not about to relieve herself. She's done that before, right in her sleep. And when that happens, no one moves. No one panics. You just shift away from the puddle and deal with it in the morning. Because what else can you do? This is not a place for outrage. This is a place for tolerance, for patience, for accepting that your foot might touch something damp and unspeakable. And all you'll do is pull it back and pretend it didn't happen. You hear someone whisper a prayer, not aloud, not clearly, just lips moving in the dark. You don't know who it is. Could be your sister, who still believes the Virgin watches her dreams, or your uncle, who prays even though he's cursed every saint under the sun. You used to pray. Now you just listen, and try not to breathe too deeply. The air's thick with sleep, with sweat, with unwashed hair and onion breath and wool grease. It clings to your throat. You swallow slowly. You adjust your elbow, which has gone numb from being pressed into the floor. Your shoulder aches. Your hip stings. But you're lucky you found a little space. A sliver of room to stretch your leg without hitting someone else's. You savor it. It won't last. Someone always rolls. Someone always shifts. Privacy is a ghost in here. Even your thoughts feel overheard. You once tried to cry silently, and your sister reached out and touched your face without saying a word. You didn't think she was awake. She didn't think you were either. That's how close everything is. Tears and dreams and lice and breath all shared, all mingling. You wonder how people ever made love in this room. The thought makes you snort quietly. You cover your mouth, then look around in case anyone noticed. But no one stirs. Just the baby, mumbling in her sleep. Just the goat, chewing something she's not supposed to. You shift again. A toe brushes your calf. It's cold, small, probably your cousin. She has night terrors sometimes and clings to whatever limb she can find. You let her, because what else can you do? There are no beds to send her back to, no doors to close. Just this one room, this one bed, this one life, pressed in from every side. You think you hear someone pass wind. You pretend you didn't. Everyone does. Sometimes loudly, sometimes with pride, sometimes in fear. You've heard worse in this room. You've smelled worse, too. The walls keep it all in, not to protect you, but to trap it. To stew the night into a thick, shared soup of everything human and animal and worn thin by the day. You sigh, you scratch your knee, you drift in and out of something like sleep, but not restful, not deep, just suspended, like a pot left hanging over a dying fire, lukewarm, unfinished. That's what sleep becomes here, a simmer, not a surrender. The goat shifts again. A foot presses into your thigh. You think you hear the old man whispering again, and you close your eyes, not because you're tired, but because there's nowhere else to look. There's no such thing as privacy in this hut. Every sound you make is someone else's lullaby or irritation. Every breath you take is shared air, stirred into the stew of smoke, sweat, and snoring that thickens by the hour. You shift, and the floor creaks beneath the straw just enough for someone nearby to grunt in their sleep, or elbow you by accident, or whisper something barely coherent in a dream that has nothing to do with you, and everything to do with how small this world truly is. You are never alone, not even in your mind. It starts to feel like there's always a cough, a murmur, a baby fussing in the corner, or an old man grinding his teeth next to the pig pen. Sometimes it's just breathing a chorus of lungs, inhaling damp, smoky air together like a hymn nobody remembers starting. You want space, silence, solitude, but those are not luxuries offered here. There's no room for them. You sleep with the people you work with, fight with, grieve with. You wake up with the same breath in your face you fell asleep to. And if someone dies, they're gone by morning. But the spot they left behind is already filled. Sometimes by a cousin, sometimes by a chicken. It doesn't matter. The space never stays empty. You share your blanket with your brother, your breath with your grandmother, and your headspace with the crying infant whose cradle is nothing more than a basket wedged between two stools. She whimpers again now, as if on cue, her voice thin and ragged. You keep your eyes shut. Maybe someone else will get up, but probably not. Everyone is pretending to sleep, each person calculating whether they're the most rested, the most responsible, or just the one whose patience gave out first. Eventually, a hand lifts the baby. Rocking begins. You hear the soft hum of a lullaby, not sung, but whispered half prayer, half surrender. The rest of the room relaxes, for now, but it won't last. Someone will shift too loudly, someone will cough up something deep and wet, someone's stomach will growl like a demon. The goat might decide she's thirsty and step directly over your sleeping uncle. You remember once when the piglet peed on your cousin's leg in the night? He didn't notice until morning. He thought it was sweat. It wasn't. That's the kind of discovery that ruins breakfast. But you eat anyway, because there's nothing else. Sleep and hunger and noise and closeness, they're all tangled together in this hut. In this life, you miss silence. Not the absence of sound, but the kind of quiet that has space in it. Here. Silence is just the moment between someone coughing and someone sneezing, or the breath you take before answering a question you didn't want to hear. You've learned to listen without reacting, to pretend you didn't hear your parents arguing in hushed tones, that you didn't hear the whispered name of the girl your brother likes, that you didn't hear your grandmother pray for death under her breath. You hear everything, but you file it away. It's the only way to stay sane, because reacting to every sound would drive you mad. You hear someone scratching now, not in shame, but in rhythm. You know the sound nails dragging against skin, slow and habitual? Probably your sister again. She's been covered in rashes since the winter began. She says it's the wool. You both know it's not. You open your eyes briefly. In the dim flicker of the fire, you catch the silhouette of your mother. She's curled upright in the corner, head bobbing, holding the baby as it sleeps across her chest. Her hair is frizzed from the smoke, and her fingers twitch from habit counting, maybe, or remembering. She doesn't look at you. You close your eyes again. There's no room for conversation here. Not now. Words take up space, and space is already in short supply. You roll slightly, and your knee touches something warm and bristly. A leg. Your brother's. Probably. He's asleep, face down in the straw, mouth open just enough to catch flies. You resist the urge to poke him. He snores loud enough to shake the rafters. But if you wake him, he'll just fart and go back to sleep. Not worth it. You remember when you tried sleeping outside once in summer. You thought it would be peaceful. The stars, the grass, the breeze. But you forgot about the damp, the biting flies, the neighbor's dogs. You came crawling back before dawn, itching and humbled. You never tried again, at least inside the hut. The discomforts are familiar, predictable. Inside, you know who breathes beside you, who smells like what, who twitches in their sleep, and who sleep talks about chickens. That familiarity is worth something, even if it's exhausting. Sometimes you wonder if nobles sleep alone, if they ever hear themselves think, or if they miss the sound of others. Because here, the noise becomes a kind of anchor. You fall asleep to the rhythm of other people's needs. You dream in voices that aren't yours. Sometimes you even wake up mid-sentence, realizing you've been whispering back to someone who wasn't talking to you. There's no barrier here, no doors, no curtains, just straw, air, and the constant press of other lives. You dream of walls, just one, even a thin one. A barrier between you and the baby's wail, between you and your uncle's snoring, between you and the future that looks exactly like this, over and over again, until the straw is on someone else's floor, and you're the one in the corner, rocking a baby who will never know what quiet really means. You stretch your legs a little, stealing an inch more space, and feel a soft grunt in response. Someone's awake. You don't speak, you just listen. A blanket shifts, a nose sniffles, a whispered curse floats across the air. All normal, all nightly. You close your eyes and accept it. This is sleep in a medieval hut, crowded, shared, noisy, and full of bodies pressed too close and emotions pressed even closer. You stop wishing for solitude. You stop expecting rest. You just let the sounds carry you, like a current, and eventually, your breathing joins the others. The hut sighs, and you let yourself drift not into sleep, but into the only version of peace you're allowed. The morning doesn't arrive with sunlight. It arrives with a rooster that sounds like it's dying every time it tries to crow. The sound pierces the hut like a rusty nail, dragging you out of your half-sleep with a wince and a groan. But it's not just the rooster. The real alarm clock is misery. Your joints ache like they've aged 50 years overnight. Your back feels warped from the straw ridges and dips, and your feet are colder than they were when you fell asleep. Something has gone numb. Possibly your left leg. Possibly your hope. You blink open your eyes to a haze of smoke still hanging low in the room, and you breathe it in like you're sipping regret. The fire has burned itself out into a bitter puddle of embers, glowing with the last indignity of a long, useless night. You lift your head, and your neck cracks so loudly it startles the hen roosting in the corner. Your sister's already sitting up, hair matted to one side of her face, scratching at her wrist like she's trying to dig something out. She doesn't say good morning. No one does. Mornings aren't good here. They're just the end of something awful and the start of something worse. You pull yourself upright, feeling every vertebra protest, and swat at your legs to shake out the straw. Some sticks stay stuck. You'll find them later. Probably at church. Probably at the worst possible moment. You stretch and immediately regret it. Your hip pops. Your knee throbs. There's a new bite just under your chin. You don't want to know what made it. Someone's already moving near the door, probably your uncle, muttering to himself as he fumbles with the latch, letting in a gust of air so cold it feels like punishment. The wind cuts through the hut like it owns the place. It sends the smoke curling in a fresh direction, stings your cheeks, and makes the baby start crying again. That sound, high and jagged, hits everyone's nerves like a hammer. Your mother rocks her gently, murmuring the same words she murmurs every morning, like she's trying to convince the world that it's worth waking up to. You try to stand. Your feet sink slightly into the dirt, toes pressing against something half buried and vaguely squishy. You don't ask. You don't look. You just step around it and move toward the corner where you tossed your shoes the night before. If you're lucky. A rat didn't drag one away. You find them, both damp, hard, cold. You shove your feet inside and feel your socks twist into the same shape as your dread. There's no breakfast waiting for you, no fire rekindled, no fresh air, no cheer, no bird song, just the creak of wood, the shiver of straw, and the low groans of everyone realizing they've survived another night. You hear your grandmother exhale as she tries to sit up. It sounds like a prayer or a warning. The rooster crows again, this time longer. Still sounds like it's dying or lying. You're not sure which. You rub your face and feel the layer of soot on your skin. It's not dirt. It's lived in air. No amount of scrubbing will make you clean. Not really. You think about the river. Cold, rushing, distant. You wonder if today will be the day someone decides you all need washing. Probably not. It's too cold. And besides, no one smells better than anyone else. The hut has equalized you all. You look around at the others, each a silhouette in the gray, smoky light. They rise in stages, like the dead unsure if it's worth the effort. Someone coughs again. A wet, dragging cough that doesn't sound new anymore. You glance over, it's your brother. He waves you off. Just cold. He rasps. Everyone nods. Everyone lies. You try to remember your dream. Maybe there was a tree in it. Maybe sun. But it fades too quickly, swallowed by the immediate task of staying warm. Your fingers feel thick. Your breath hangs in the air, visible, like it's trying to escape. You look up and see the thatch again, darkened with dew, drooping slightly, already starting to drip. The wind outside moans like it's lonely. You think about going back to sleep, but the hut won't let you. It never does. It lets you rest just long enough to remember what comfort might feel like, and then it takes it back. Your back protests again as you move to the fire pit, crouching over the ash. You stir it gently with the iron poker. Nothing, no embers. You curse under your breath and glance around. No dry wood. Of course not. The pile was used up yesterday, and no one wants to fetch more until the sun's higher. You could go out now, but that means facing the mud, the wind, and the judgment of the chickens. They know when you're weak. You stay by the pit, pretending the cold ash is warm. It isn't. It's soft, though, like fine dust, like memory. You draw a line through it with your finger, then wipe it away before anyone sees. You think about bread, not because you'll have any, but because the hunger is starting to chew at your ribs. It's a dull, familiar ache. Not sharp, not new. You've lived with it long enough to ignore it. But mornings make it louder. Your stomach groans, and your sister looks up. You both smile grimly. No words needed. You're in the same hollowed-out state, half awake, half alive, and wholly done with being cold. You hear the goats outside. They're louder in the mornings, angry that they've made it through another night and still haven't been turned into stew. The wind makes the walls creak. You shiver. Someone drops a ladle and curses. You scratch your leg, feel a welt, and try not to think about fleas again. But you do. You always do. You close your eyes and breathe. And the day begins not with hope, not with light, but with ache. You listen to the hut breathe. It's a quiet sound, but once you notice it, you can't unhear it. The soft exhale of wood settling, straw rustling, the occasional wheeze of wind pushing through the walls like an old ghost asking for shelter. This place doesn't just creak, it speaks, not in words, but in slow, ambient murmurs. If you stay quiet long enough, you start to hear things you wish you hadn't: the scratch of nails behind the wattle, the low moan of timber that remembers every winter, every death. The sounds here aren't random. They're old, rehearsed. The walls groan like someone pressing against them from the inside, and you lie still, suddenly aware that sleep is no longer an escape. It's a test. Every night you survive is a small betrayal of the odds. Your brother coughs again this time, not sharp, but sunken, as if something inside him is folding in. He clutches his blanket tighter, murmuring a prayer that never finishes. You pretend not to notice. That's how things are handled here. Denial is cheaper than medicine. Someone stirs beside you and lets out a breath that they've been holding all night. Another cough echoes from the far end of the room. The baby cries again. Then, silence. The kind that presses against your ears like a wet cloth. This is what morning sounds like. Not birdsong, but breath struggling through smoke. Not alarm bells, but groans and wood cracking under its own age. Historians still argue whether peasants truly slept through the night or merely drifted in and out between bursts of work, worry, and prayer. But in this hut, it's not sleep. It's more like suspension. Like everyone here is held in a state of waiting. You shift slightly and feel the brittle straw beneath you snap. It's such a small sound, but it joins the orchestra, a symphony of discomfort. You breathe shallowly now, not because you want to, but because the air tastes like ash and mildew. The smoke never really leaves. It settles into your lungs the same way it settles into the thatch, slow, invisible, permanent, and when someone breathes out, you can almost see it, a faint puff of memory rising into the rafters. You wonder how many last breaths the ceiling holds, how many coughs have evaporated into the straw, how many whispered fears now linger above you, too afraid to fall. You lie there and listen to the house remember. A distant thud makes you flinch. Maybe something fell outside. Maybe something arrived. Either way, no one moves. Movement means attention. Attention means responsibility. You scratch at a new bite forming behind your ear and wince as your nail catches skin. It bleeds quickly in the cold, but you don't bother to wipe it. It'll clot or not. You lie back, eyes tracing the lines in the wooden beams above you. Someone carved initials into one of them so faint you wouldn't notice unless you stared long enough. You wonder whose they were. Someone who slept here, or someone who died here. Maybe both. In this place, the line between the two is always thin. The groaning of the walls grows louder as the wind picks up. The sound isn't frightening exactly, just persistent. A reminder that outside still exists, even if you haven't seen it in days. The hut isn't well sealed. The cold leaks in through invisible cracks, curling around your ankles like a warning. You feel it rise through the floor, pooling beneath your spine. You shift again, trying to find a position where your shoulder doesn't throb. There isn't one. The straw beneath you has thinned. Someone must have pulled at it in the night. Maybe the rats. Maybe your sister. You'll need to replace it soon. But that means gathering more. And that means walking to the field. And that means another argument over whose turn it is. You close your eyes and try to disappear. Not entirely. Just a little. Just enough to pretend that you're not part of this room, this world, this sound. You hear your grandmother mutter something half prayer, half memory. Her voice is like worn cloth, frayed, soft, and always slightly damp. She hums an old tune no one remembers the words to. You wonder if she remembers them, or if she's just stitching silence into melody. The baby stirs again, but doesn't cry. A small mercy. Outside, The wind whistles through the trees like a long-lost lullaby turned bitter. You imagine being outside, not standing in the mud, but far, far away, where roofs don't drip and walls don't groan and you can sleep without scratching yourself bloody. You imagine sleeping under real blankets, thick ones that smell like lavender and linen instead of smoke and rot. You imagine not hearing your entire family breathe beside you. You imagine space, but it's just a trick of the mind, a kind one, the kind that lets you survive here. Someone moves to stoke the fire again, and you hear the familiar clang of iron against stone. A spark, a cough, another failure. The fire is stubborn today, or tired, like the rest of you. You pull your blanket tighter, knowing it won't help. The wind finds every weakness. It snakes into your sleeves, your collar, your thoughts. You wonder what day it is. You wonder if that matters. You try to remember what you dreamed. Nothing. Just shadows. And the sound of the hut breathing. It breathes in gusts, in creaks, in coughs, and you breathe with it. Not because you want to, but because this is where you are. This is what your life sounds like. You listen again, and the walls whisper back. You try to shut your eyes again, but the darkness inside them is restless. It's no longer just the fleas, or the cold, or your aching side. It's the stories, the ones they whisper when they think the children are asleep. You weren't supposed to hear them. No one ever says them during the day. But at night, when the wind howls and the fire dies, people speak differently. They speak in warnings, about things that happen when the moon is wrong, about children taken from cradles and replaced with creatures that never learn to speak, about eyes in the woods that don't blink, about women who dream too vividly and wake with bruises on their necks. You tell yourself they're just stories, but you also make sure your feet are covered, just in case. The hut doesn't feel safe. Not really. Not when the silence stretches so thin you start to hear things between the beams. Not voices, exactly. More like intentions. You think you hear someone say your name. You tell yourself it's your brother dreaming, or the wind, or memory playing tricks again. Historians still argue whether medieval villagers genuinely believed in fairies and spirits, or whether it was just a convenient way to explain the unexplainable. But when the goat dies for no reason, or your cousin speaks in tongues for 3 nights straight, or when the bread rises in the shape of a skull, no one debates it. They just light a candle and hang rosemary over the door. Superstition doesn't care if you believe it waits for you to need it. You've seen your mother draw a circle in the ash around the cradle. You've watched your uncle spit over his shoulder every time the rooster crows late. You've seen the girl next door wrap her braid with a red thread each new moon to ward off dreams. And you've heard the whispers when someone sleepwalks into the woods and doesn't come back. They were marked. They say they forgot to hide their name. So now, when you lie awake at night and feel the air grow too still, you breathe through your teeth and keep your name tucked beneath your tongue, just in case something's listening, just in case it's your turn. The baby stirs again, but this time, it doesn't cry. Just a small noise, like a gasp. Like the breath caught in a dream. Your mother hums low in her throat, a sound without melody, meant more for the air than the child. She doesn't open her eyes. She just rocks gently. The motion creaks the bench beneath her, a rhythm older than the lullabies. You hear it and feel the heaviness return to your limbs. But it's not sleep. It's weight. You turn on your side, pulling the blanket with you, watching the edge of the room where the thatch meets wall. That corner has always felt strange. Not colder, just off. Like it bends the dark in a different way. You stare too long, then force yourself to look away. You've been warned. Don't watch the corners too long. Don't count your fingers after waking. Don't sleep facing the door on Midsummer's Eve. You don't know why. You don't ask. You just obey. That's what keeps you safe. Not understanding, but obedience. You scratch your ankle. Feel another welt swelling. You welcome it. Flea bites are predictable. They don't whisper. They don't stare. They don't stand at the edge of your bed when everyone else is asleep. You shift again. You try to focus on something mundane, the leaking roof, the burned soup from last week, the time the pig broke into the grain bin. anything but that old tale your aunt told about the man who slept with his eyes open and saw something standing over him that smiled too wide. You whisper a blessing you barely remember, something about iron or ash or bone, just enough to fill the air, to make noise, because silence is when they come. You hear a shuffle outside, slow, dragging, not animal, but no one else reacts, not even the dog. Then you remember, the dog's gone. You reach down and grab a piece of straw, twisting it between your fingers until it snaps. You do it again and again, until your hands ache. The motion helps. The repetition, the small, brittle sound, it drowns out the other things. You think of the priest who visits once a month, how he sleeps in a separate hut, how he refuses to bless the house after dusk. Too late, he says. The door's already open by then. No one asks what he means. You lie still, eyes open, watching nothing, and pray to stay part of it. Just another shadow among shadows, no glowing eyes, no too long fingers, just you and your breath and the straw. You remember last winter, when a woman from 3 huts down started sleep-talking in Latin. She never learned Latin. They tied her to the bed. She stopped speaking, but now she won't step inside her own house after dark. Sleeps in the barn. Says she feels watched. You scratch your side, draw blood without meaning to. You'll clean it later, or not. The hut takes what it wants. Straw, skin, sleep, names. The wind picks up again. It whistles against the slats. Someone mutters in their sleep, then goes quiet. You don't move. You match your breathing to the rhythm of the goat's snore. You think about morning, about bread, about walking to the stream, about not looking over your shoulder, about pretending none of this matters. But for now, you just lie there, listening, naming nothing, remembering less, and waiting for the dark to forget you. Rent doesn't wait for the sun to rise, and it certainly doesn't care that you spent the night twisting in a bed of damp straw while something bit your thigh and your sister whispered in her sleep about teeth in the walls. No, rent comes anyway, not in the form of a landlord with a ledger and a deadline, but as a tithe collector with a cold smile and a pouch that never seems full. You hear his boots before you see him, outside the hut, crunching in the frost, slow and heavy like he knows no one inside has enough to give, but will give it anyway. Your father is already awake, tying the same frayed belt around his tunic, rubbing his hands together as though friction can create miracles. He doesn't complain. He never does. He just stands by the door, waiting to hand over the best of what little you have: eggs, maybe, or a wheel of sour cheese wrapped in cloth. Maybe that hide he's been saving for winter boots. You sit up slowly, pulling the blanket from your shoulders, feeling the air strike your skin like insult. No fire, of course. You reach for your shoes, still damp from yesterday, and push your feet inside, pretending they don't squish. Outside, the boots stop, a knock, not gentle, not angry, just inevitable. The way storms come, or death. Your mother opens the door, not with words, but with her eyes downcast and her hands already empty. The man doesn't even glance inside. He doesn't need to. He's seen 1,000 huts like this, and they all reek of the same things: boiled roots, burned hair, and dignity turned into compost. He speaks a name, your father's. It sounds like a curse in his mouth. Your father nods, hands over the offering, and the man doesn't thank him. Just turns. Boots crunch again, disappearing. Rent has been paid, but the hut feels poorer for it, colder, lighter in the worst way, like something was taken that wasn't in the basket. Maybe pride, maybe hope. Historians still argue whether peasants were crushed more by the taxes or the fear of not paying them, but you don't argue. You feel it, in your chest, in the way your father sighs and doesn't speak, in the way your mother sits back down without looking anyone in the eye. You glance at your sister. She's still scratching, still silent, still dreaming of escape. Probably. She says she wants to marry a man from the city, one with clean boots, one who's never milked a goat. You don't say it out loud. but you know she'll probably die in this hut. Not violently, just eventually. Worn down like the door hinge or the spoon with the split handle. It's not tragedy. It's routine. The same way the rent comes, the same way you rise, the same way you chew yesterday's bread and call it breakfast. You feel the chills settle deeper into your clothes, like the taxman left it behind as a final reminder. It's not even about what he took. It's about what he expects, that you'll survive, that you'll have more next time, that something in this hut is worth extracting, and you will find something always. A string of garlic, a bundle of wool, a handful of grain, or maybe a favor. Your uncle once gave his strongest son for a season to the steward's manor. He came back quiet, limping. No one asked why. He never said. But the rent was paid, and the hut remained standing. You remember that when you look at the door, the same one that boy walked through with both his legs working, and came back leaning on a stick. You wonder what rent really is. Money goods. Or just the tax of being poor in a place that forgets you when it rains and remembers you only when it wants something. You breathe in the smoke from the cold hearth and feel it sting. Your throat's been sore all winter, but you haven't mentioned it. Your father has enough to worry about. Your mother keeps chewing cloves when her teeth ache. You think it helps. Or maybe she just likes the taste of pretending. You pull your coat tighter. It smells like the goat. You don't care. It's warm. At least on the side that's not torn. Your sister sits up now. Her hair is stuck to her face. She peels it back, looks at the door, then at you. She doesn't ask what was taken. She already knows. Rent never surprises. It just returns. Like hunger. Like winter. You hear someone outside again this time, not the taxman. A neighbor, maybe asking for salt, or news, or help burying something. You hope it's just salt. You move toward the wall where the last sack of barley hangs. There's less than you thought. You pull the string tighter and pretend you didn't see the bottom. Later. That's for later. Today's already stolen enough. The hut creaks again. Not from wind, just age. And you realize it, too, is paying rent. In layers of rot. In the way the floor sinks slightly more each year. In the way the roof drips even when the sun is out. Everything pays eventually, even the things that can't speak. You sit back down on your corner of straw, legs crossed, spine bent. You reach under the blanket and scratch your calf, feeling a new bump rising. You smile a little. At least the fleas don't charge interest. At least they don't knock. You lie back again, listening to the sound of your family eating quietly. No one chews too loud. No one talks. The food is gone in minutes. The hunger, not so much. You close your eyes, not to sleep, just to hide. For a breath, for the length of a swallow. And when you open them again, the hut hasn't changed. Still dark, still cramped, still waiting to give more than it has. And you know without being told that rent will come again. You don't rest here. Not really. Rest is something nobles do. In rooms with shutters and soft pillows and time. In this hut, sleep is just something you fall into when your body gives up, like collapsing, but horizontal. You lie down not to be refreshed, but because standing hurts more. You close your eyes, not to dream, but because there's nothing left to look at. Your limbs ache from the day before, and the thought of tomorrow already makes your stomach tighten. The truth is, peasant sleep is closer to pause than peace. It's what happens when the body says, enough, even if your mind is still running in circles, counting firewood, imagining sickness, fearing floods, wondering if that chicken will lay again. You curl up in the straw, tug the blanket over your shoulder, and try not to think. But it doesn't work. Your thoughts crawl like the lice in your collar, tiny, determined, never still. You remember your father's cough this morning, the way it echoed, a little wetter than before. You remember the look on your mother's face as she turned away from the empty basket. You remember the sound your sister made when she found another hole in her only shoes. And all of it hums in your skull like a second heartbeat, thudding against the silence, refusing to sleep, even if you try. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants were overworked to the point of physical collapse or simply adjusted to low expectations. But you don't need a debate. You have your spine, and it tells you the truth. It creaks like the roof. It grinds when you bend. It locks when you lie too still for too long. You shift again, trying to find the soft spot in the straw, the one not already flattened into a bruise. Your elbow hits a knot of dry stems and recoils. You breathe. You let the ache in your shoulders settle. It's become familiar now, like the smell of smoke in your clothes or the weight of your patched tunic on your chest. You pull it tighter, though the wool scratches your neck. It's warm, at least. Or maybe you've just stopped noticing the cold. That happens. You stop noticing things. The pain in your knees, the groan of the floor, the fact that your fingers crack every time you wake up and stretch them. You only really notice what changes. And the truth is, not much ever does. The hut is the same. The straw is the same. The prayers muttered in the dark are always the same. The ones that start with, "Let me wake up tomorrow," and end with, "or don't," if it's easier. You say them sometimes, quietly, just to hear a voice, just to know you're still here. You remember once, during the harvest, a man from a neighboring village came through. He had shoes made of leather, clean ones. You couldn't stop staring. You thought, maybe if I had those, I'd feel lighter, like I wasn't dragging the entire hut with me wherever I went. He didn't stay, just passed through, muttering something about debts and land, but you never forgot the shoes. Now you dream about them, not for what they are, but for what they aren't: wet, itchy, full of holes. You hear a noise now, your brother, shifting in the dark. His breathing is shallow. He's young, but already hunched like your grandfather was. That's what this place does to you. It folds you early. It makes you old before your voice deepens. You close your eyes again and listen to the rhythm of his breath. It's the closest thing to a lullaby you'll get. That and the sound of your own heartbeat slowing as exhaustion wins. Your mother coughs, then quiets. The goat shifts. The baby lets out a sigh, not a cry, just a sigh. You let it wash over you, and for a moment, you feel the edge of rest, not comfort, not safety, but something close to surrender. You think about the word rest. It sounds like a gift, something soft and white, like a folded cloth on a clean table. You've never seen that. Here, rest is a splintered bench, a stolen hour, a back pressed against packed earth. It's eating a hot turnip before your stomach knots. It's finishing your chores before the rain hits. It's not being the one who gets sick first. Rest is rationed like everything else. You turn your face into the crook of your arm. It smells like old sweat and animal fur. You don't care. It's yours. You lie still and try not to think about the morning. You try not to think about the ache already blooming in your legs, the cold air on your neck, the sting of fresh bites. You try not to think about the way your toes tingle from the chill. You try not to think about anything, but thoughts come anyway. They come like mice through a crack, fast, uninvited. You think about the stew you spilled last week and the hunger that followed. You think about the roof leak that still hasn't been fixed. You think about your cousin who went to the city and never came back. You think about your father's face when he said her name. You think about how silence is easier than hope. How quiet makes it feel like nothing bad will happen even if it already has. You pull your blanket higher, over your nose, and feel your breath warm the wool. You focus on that, just that. The simple rhythm of breath, in, out, in, out. You let your mind rest on that one thing, not the aches, not the memories, not the weight of your body against the hard floor, just breath, just the sound of it, just the rise and fall. You let the thoughts slide past, you let the darkness blur, and finally, you feel your body forget how much it hurts, for a moment, for just long enough, not sleep, but something close, something merciful. Time doesn't pass in this hut, it repeats. And the strange thing is, you don't notice at first. You wake up to the same gray light, the same smell of smoke and sweat, The same groan from the same floorboard under your heel. And for a heartbeat, you think it's still yesterday. Or maybe the day before. Or a day from a year you've forgotten how to name. The only thing that marks time now is the church bell. And even that feels like a rumor when the wind's against it. You lie in bed and listen for it, counting the seconds between each tone like they might reveal some great secret. Like which hour it is or what kind of life you're supposed to be living. But even that's uncertain. Bells lie. They tell you it's morning when it's still dark. They call you to prayer when your knees can't kneel. They toll for deaths no one explains. Historians still argue whether these bells kept people grounded or just chained them to a rhythm someone else designed. You're not sure it matters. All you know is that your body wakes before the first toll, as if it's been trained not by the bell but by dread. You sit up in the straw, joints creaking louder than the bell itself, and wait for the sound to reach you. It always comes late. The wind steals it, stretches it, plays with it, and by the time you hear it, 3 notes, 4, you've already decided what hour it is, whether the bread will be enough, whether you'll go out to the fields or just stay inside and fix the roof again. The church decides time, but time in the hut is different. It bends, it sags. You could swear it's been a week since you've seen the sun, and yet only a day since the last funeral. Or was that 2? You can't ask. People don't talk about time here. Not out loud. They just grunt, move, scratch, and pray. Or they don't pray. Some gave that up. They say God can't hear through walls stuffed with straw. You're not sure if they're wrong, but when the bell tolls, even the goat looks up. Even the baby quiets. That sound, thin and distant, tells you that outside still exists, that there's a world with stone and glass and voices raised in Latin, a world with candles not made of tallow, a world that hasn't forgotten how to measure things. But then it fades. The wind closes the window again. The hut swallows you back, and time thickens. You look at the fire dying again, of course, and poke at the embers, still warm. That's something. You gather twigs and old straw, feed the pit like a hungry mouth. You blow gently. You wait for light, and as it rises, the smoke curls again, and the shadows on the wall begin to move. Not fast, just enough to remind you that you're still here, still breathing, still tied to this spinning rhythm of hunger, cold, and repetition. Your mother is already kneeling, grinding meal with her elbows tight to her ribs. She rocks back and forth as she works, like a wave that's forgotten what stillness means. Your brother is trying to find his left boot. He always loses it, even though he puts it in the same place. Your sister is braiding her hair with a red thread. Again. She says it keeps the dreams away. You don't argue, not with the look in her eyes. You sit in your corner and try to remember what day it is. But the bell has gone quiet, and without it, time unravels. You remember once when a storm knocked down the steeple, and the bell was silent for 7 days. By the end of it, your aunt was washing clothes twice in the same water and swearing it was Sunday. A boy cut his finger and no one knew if he could work again or if he was cursed. Even the rooster stopped crowing. It was like the world forgot how to breathe. Eventually, a priest came and rang a handbell through the streets, shouting the days. People cried, not because they believed him, but because it gave them something to agree on. You think about that now as you chew a crust of bread so hard it hurts your teeth. The texture is awful, but it tastes like memory. The same loaf you've eaten for years. The same flour. The same ash. The same bite. You wonder if it's been hours or minutes since you woke. You look at the slat in the wall. The light hasn't changed, but your stomach growls, and your skin itches, and your mind feels slow. That's time here, not a clock. A body falling into itself. You lie back in the straw, too tired to move. You stare at the rafters. There's a crack shaped like a cross above you. You've never noticed it before. Or maybe you have. Maybe it's always been there, and your brain just stopped showing it to you because it was tired of making meaning. You blink. The crack stays. It twitches when the wind pushes against the wall. You listen again for the bell. Nothing. Just the baby crying. Just someone coughing. Just the goat stomping one foot in boredom or protest. And for a moment, you feel suspended like a thread caught between 2 pegs. Not taut. Not slack, just hanging. That's what sleep is like here. That's what rest becomes. That's what time does. It stops feeling linear. It becomes something you float through, like smoke in the rafters. You don't move. You let yourself drift in it, not into sleep, but into the space where bells no longer matter, and minutes can't be measured. And your breath is the only rhythm that makes sense. Outside, someone is kneading bread, and you can hear it, not the soft thud of dough, but the creak of the stool under their weight, the slap of palm against table, the faint whistle of flour rising in the cold air. It's a strangely comforting sound, rhythmic and slow, like a heartbeat from another life. Inside, the hut smells faintly of ash and old cabbage, but your nose catches a trace of yeast, too. And for a moment, you remember what hunger feels like before it turns into a constant. You shift in your straw bed, the blanket tangled around your legs, your arms stiff from a night of sleeping in a crooked position. You can't stretch without elbowing someone, so you wiggle instead, inch by inch, until you can sit up and rub your neck. You hear movement, your sister rising to feed the chickens, your mother whispering something into the baby's ear, your father cursing softly at the state of his boots. The day begins not with fanfare, but with footsteps. Everyone has a task, even if they're too tired to do it. You're sent to fetch water today. Again, you pull on your shoes still wet, always wet, and wrap a scarf around your neck, though it smells like mildew and goat fur. When you step outside, the cold hits your skin like a slap. The air tastes metallic. The sky flat and gray. No sun, no storm. Just that in-between weather that drains the soul. You pass the woman kneading bread. She nods. Her hands are cracked and white with flour. Her eyes are red from smoke or crying. You can't tell. You nod back. Words feel too heavy for mornings like this. You carry your buckets, one in each hand, letting them knock against your knees. The walk is short, but your fingers are already stinging from the cold by the time you reach the stream. The water moves slowly, rimmed with ice. You have to break a thin crust with a stick before dipping the buckets in. The splash is loud, violent against the hush of frost, and you flinch even though no one is around to hear. On the walk back, the weight digs into your shoulders, your arms shaking with every step. The water sloshes out with each jolt, soaking your sleeves. You don't stop. You don't rest. You just keep walking, past the neighbor mending a net, past the boy feeding ashes to the pigs, past the chickens scratching patterns into the frozen mud. By the time you step back inside, the hut is filled with the sounds of life again. The goat bleating, the fire cracking, the baby fussing. You set the water down near the hearth and sink back into your corner. No one thanks you. No one notices. The bread is nearly ready. It smells stronger now, and your stomach twists with the promise of food. But there are mouths to feed before yours. The baby gets the first dip of broth, your father the second. Your sister peels a turnip and gnaws it like fruit. You wait. That's what hunger teaches you to wait, quietly, politely, even when your hands shake. Historians still argue whether peasant diets were truly deficient or merely monotonous. But you know the answer. You can feel your ribs. You can feel your gums pull back from your teeth. You can feel the way your thoughts slow when you haven't eaten enough. You take your crust of bread when it's handed to you and chew slowly, letting it soften in your mouth before swallowing. You close your eyes and imagine it's warm. That helps. A little. You finish quickly. It doesn't fill you, but it silences your stomach, which is all that's expected. Fullness is for feast days. Maybe Easter, maybe never. You sit still, letting the warmth of the fire reach your knees. Someone knocks at the door. You freeze. Not the tithe man. He's already come. It's a neighbor, asking for help. A birth, maybe, or a burial, or a broken cartwheel. You don't hear the words, only your father's answer. We'll come. That's how it works here. No favors, just debts in reverse. You scratch your elbow absently and find another welt. The fleas haven't left. They won't. You've stopped naming them. There are too many. Your skin is a map of irritation. Your legs are lined with half-healed bites. You stand up again to stretch, but space is limited. The ceiling seems lower in the morning, the air thicker, the fire brighter, but only by contrast. Your sister braids her hair again. The red thread is frayed now, but she wraps it twice anyway. Eyes closed, lips moving in some private spell. You don't ask. She doesn't explain. The bread woman passes the window again, this time with a sack. You wonder where she's going. Probably the mill. Probably to beg for more flour. You sit back down. There's nothing else to do. Outside, the sky is already fading into late morning. The bell hasn't rung. You wait for it, even though you know it's unreliable. Still, it helps to pretend that time has shape. You listen for it. Past the noise of the hut, all you hear is chewing, muttering, the crackle of damp wood on fire. You close your eyes and picture the bell, heavy, bronze, hung between timbers older than your grandfather. You imagine the sound it makes, low, round, holy. You've only seen it once, but you think about it often. You wonder who pulls the rope, whether their hands are cold like yours, whether they believe in what they're calling people toward. The bread woman doesn't believe, your mother says, but she still kneels. That's enough. Belief doesn't matter. Ritual does. You lie back again, arms across your chest, and let the sounds wash over you. You've grown so used to them that silence feels foreign. The bread is gone now, the fire low again. The day has begun its crawl toward dusk, even though the sun hasn't come out once. You wonder what it's like to sleep in a place where meals don't depend on weather, where bread rises for taste, not survival. But you stop yourself. It's dangerous to wonder too much. You itch again, bite your tongue to stop scratching, and exhale into the darkened thatch above. Cold creeps in like a thought you can't silence. It starts at your toes, slips past the seams of your shoes, slithers up your ankles, and settles in your knees like a grudge. It doesn't arrive all at once, it seeps. Through walls, through breath, through the places your blanket doesn't reach. You sit in the hut and try not to shiver, because shivering makes people look at you. And when they look, they say things like stand closer to the fire or go chop more wood, and you're too tired for both. So you sit still and try to become a shape the cold can't find. But it always does. It finds everyone. You see it in the way your sister's lips turn blue at the corners when she stops talking. You see it in your father's hands, which no longer uncurl fully, in your mother's teeth, which chatter when she hums, but only if she forgets to clench her jaw. The cold is not weather anymore. It's part of the hut, as permanent as the smoke stains on the ceiling, as unrelenting as the fleas in your blanket. And when the wind shifts outside and you hear it groaning like something ancient and angry, you feel it all over again, that subtle panic that tonight might be colder than the last, that tonight someone might not wake up. You've seen it happen. Old Marna, who just stopped breathing one night, her hands still wrapped around her knees for warmth. The baby down the lane, born in frost and buried in frost, without ever knowing anything different. They say God knows the names of the frozen. You hope he does. You whisper their names when the wind gets loud, just in case. Historians still argue whether the dead of winter took more lives through sickness or exposure. But in the hut, those distinctions blur. Cold is the beginning of every story and the ending of too many. You press your back against the wall and feel the chill press back. The wattle is damp, always damp. No matter how many times it's patched or smeared with new daub, it drinks the fog like a beast, then exhales it slowly into the room. You can see your breath now, floating above your lap like smoke. It hangs there for a moment before vanishing into the stale air. You've never seen snow fall from inside a warm room. The idea sounds fictional, like something from a saint's tale, watching flakes while sipping broth, wrapped in wool, with no wind in your bones. Here, snow means a wet floor, slippery boots, frost in the thatch, and a fire that needs twice the wood to do half the work. You try to remember the last time you felt warm all the way through. Not just your face, not just your hands, but everything. Your blood, your spine, the ache behind your ribs. Maybe never. Maybe that's something people like you don't get to feel. You shift and feel the straw crackle beneath you. Damp in places where the goat stood too close earlier. You don't bother moving. The dry spots are already taken. The baby is wrapped in every scrap of cloth the family owns, and your mother leans over her like a shield. You see her eyes blink slowly, as if she's learning to sleep with them open. Your brother's feet are resting against yours now, and you let them. You share heat the way others share gossip, quietly, with no expectation of return. You remember last winter, when your fingers split open from the cold, tiny fissures, like someone had carved runes into your knuckles. You wrapped them in old rags and pretended they didn't sting. They did. For weeks. You told yourself they were healing even when they oozed. That's what hope looks like here, convincing yourself you're not falling apart, just changing shape. You listen to the wind now, pressing against the walls like it's trying to get in. Sometimes it succeeds. There's always a crack somewhere, a gap, a loose thatch that lets the outside whisper to the inside. You try to ignore it. You try to focus on the fire, small, weak, but alive. That's enough. Someone coughs. A wet sound, sharp, too sharp. You glance over. It's your uncle, hunched in the corner. He looks thinner than yesterday. His blanket is too small. He doesn't ask for more. No one does. There's only so much to go around. You think of the saints again, the ones who walked barefoot through snow because they wanted to feel suffering. You think they should have come here. They wouldn't have had to try so hard. You stretch your feet toward the fire, feel a flicker of warmth kiss your soles. It fades quickly, but it's enough to remind you what heat feels like, what it once meant. You close your eyes and imagine lying in a sunbeam, barefoot, with dry clothes and bread that isn't cold. You imagine a room with doors that close all the way, where no wind finds your skin. You imagine sleeping through the night without waking up once, but your toes twitch from the chill and pull you back. Someone's stoking the fire again. You hear the scrape of stick against ash, the whisper of breath blown into embers. The glow brightens for a moment, then dims. There's not much wood left. You'll have to go out for more. Or someone will. Not you. Not yet. You've gone 2 days in a row. You lie back and curl your knees to your chest. It's the only position that keeps your belly from aching with cold. You pull your scarf over your mouth and breathe into it, trying to trap heat. The fabric is damp now. It sticks to your lips. You don't care. It smells like home, like goat, like smoke, like survival. And that's enough. You stop thinking about warmth. You stop thinking about anything. You just exist, one breath at a time, until the cold becomes background noise and your thoughts begin to wander into that soft, numb place where even dreams shiver. Some nights, not everyone wakes up. It happens quietly, no screaming, no gasps, just a breath that never makes it back. You've seen it before. You've seen someone curled just like you, wrapped in the same wool, head turned gently toward the wall, body bent from years of bending, and in the morning, they're simply still, not dramatically, not in horror, but in the kind of stillness that doesn't belong to sleep. That kind of stillness sinks into the hut like a second silence. Thicker, heavier. It arrives before anyone speaks it aloud. You feel it in the way people move. Slower. You feel it in the way your mother stirs the pot, not looking at anyone. In the way your brother doesn't ask for food, and your sister braids her hair too tight, hands shaking. You know it before the blanket is pulled back, before someone checks for breath, before the whisper, "They're gone." That's all that's said. Not a name, not a prayer, just gone. The same way the warmth left the hut last night, the same way the goat's milk stopped flowing, gone. And you sit there, suddenly afraid to blink, because if sleep can do that, if sleep can take someone so softly, what's to stop it from taking you? Historians still argue about peasant death rates in winter, whether malnutrition or infection claim more. But those numbers don't feel like numbers when you've slept an arm's length from the dead, when you've stepped over someone who never moved again. Death in the hut isn't announced. It's absorbed. The straw gets pulled away, the body wrapped, the corner swept clean, and that space gets filled by a cousin, a pig, a sack of flour. Life spills back in before the chill has even lifted, because it has to. The hut cannot hold emptiness. It has no room for it, no time. You watched your grandmother vanish like that one day, murmuring a song in her cracked voice. The next day, hushed. She didn't cry out. didn't ask for anything. She simply let go. You remember the coldness of her hands as your mother wrapped them in the shawl she used for baking days. She said it was better that way, that old bones deserved warmth. Even at the end, you didn't understand it then. You might not understand it now. But you repeat the gesture. Sometimes, when someone's sick, you wrap their hands. You hum. You tell yourself it matters. The baby coughs again in the corner, a rattling sound that's too deep for a body so small. You pretend you don't hear it. Everyone does. Because if you acknowledge it, it becomes a question: will she wake? Will she stay? And questions like that are dangerous in a place like this. The hut doesn't answer them kindly. You pull your blanket tighter around your shoulders and stare at the ceiling, wondering if the thatch would remember your name if you disappeared, if it would sag a little lower in the spot where you slept, or if someone else would lie there by nightfall, pressing their shoulder into your hollow, adding their breath to the smoke. The fire snaps sharply, a sudden crack that makes everyone flinch. Someone stirs the ashes with a stick, muttering. You see the silhouette of your father, hunched and slow, poking at the embers like he's angry at them for surviving. He doesn't speak. He hasn't spoken much since last spring. Since the fever, he buried 3 people in 6 days, dug the holes himself, didn't eat for 2, and when he came back into the hut, he sat by the wall and stared at the fire like it owed him something. Maybe it does. Maybe we all do. You think about how death here isn't always loud. Sometimes it slips in while you're gathering wood or fixing the roof or pressing dough. It comes between breaths, in the gap between bell rings. It doesn't wait for goodbyes, doesn't ask for drama. It just folds the body inward, presses the soul into silence, and keeps moving. You've learned not to cry when it happens, not because it doesn't hurt, but because the hut doesn't have the space for mourning. Grief here is quiet. It hides under blankets. It curls beside the fire. It gets swallowed by chores and seasons and the need to keep going. You light a candle when you can. You whisper a name. You don't say more. You can't. There's too much to do. There's always too much to do. You remember how your cousin laughed when the priest said the soul leaves through the mouth. She said, "Then why do the dead smell like silence?" She was sent to gather kindling after that. You never forgot it. Silence does smell like something here. It's thick, like damp wood and breath and the absence of soup. It's a presence, not a void. You sit in it now, watching the shadows flicker across the wall, and think of all the people who've sat exactly where you sit now, who've slept in the same straw, scratched the same bites, stared at the same ceiling, maybe even thought the same thoughts, wondered if the chill in their spine was just the cold, or something older, something watching, something choosing. You lie back slowly, not because you're tired, but because there's nowhere else to go. You stare at the roof and imagine your own breath curling upward, joining the rest. You wonder how many breaths the hut holds, how many names, how many endings no one speaks of. You close your eyes and promise yourself you'll wake, that your breath will return, that you won't go still tonight. And in that promise, you sleep, not easily, but bravely. The walls remember more than you do. They hold the weight of every night you've survived, every cough that ended in silence, every laugh that cracked through the smoke once and then never returned. They're made of more than wattle and daub. They're made of years, layers of mud mixed with straw, packed in by calloused hands now long gone. You run your fingers along the surface and feel the ridges like scars, uneven and cold. If you press your ear close enough, you can almost hear the past breathing through them. Not voices, just impressions, sounds without language, shifts in the wind that don't match the weather. This wall was patched after your uncle's accident. That corner was where the cradle used to rock. The small gap near the beam is where the owl got in during the last winter's storm, flapping and screeching until someone threw a shoe at it and broke a candle holder. It's all there, held tight in the silence between each heartbeat. You remember when the fire got too high one night and a piece of the wall blackened. You touched it in the morning and it crumbled under your fingers like ash soaked in memory. No one speaks of that night anymore, but the wall does. It leans a little to the left now, just slightly, as if trying to distance itself from what it saw. Historians like to ask what peasants believed, what they feared, what they hoped for, but you think they've never truly listened to a hut groan under the weight of its own knowledge. The wall doesn't lie, it just doesn't explain. It offers you its silence and waits for you to make peace with it. You sit with your back against it, your shoulder pressing into the seam between two timbers. The cold seeps through, but it feels almost comforting now, familiar, like a grandmother's sigh or a warning wrapped in wool. You've cried against this wall. You've bled against it. You've heard secrets told just inches from where you sit now. Secrets meant only for the dark. When your cousin confessed that he wanted to run away, he pressed his forehead to this very plank, whispering like it might offer him direction. He never left, got married, lost a child, fell quiet. The wall remembers, not just the people, but the moments. The stillness when everyone realized the harvest had failed. The gasps when the steward's men came and took your neighbor's last pig. The giggles when the goat got inside and refused to leave the bed. The sobs when the priest said there'd be no mass that month because too many had died. You reach up now and trace the outline of a handprint faded, just a smudge of oil and dirt. It might be yours, might be your mother's, might be from someone who died before you were born. Doesn't matter. It's still here, like everything else. You scratch your arm absent-mindedly, feel a bite swelling beneath the sleeve. You wince, press harder against the wall. It doesn't move. It never does. It's the only thing that hasn't. People change. They wear out, they go silent, but the hut stays, and not just stays, it listens. Every argument, every lullaby, every moment of silence after a door closes too hard. The walls don't forgive, but they don't accuse, either. They just absorb. The baby is sleeping now, tucked in the far corner where the thatch hangs lowest. You can't see her, but you hear the breath, thin and soft like someone exhaling a thread. Your mother hums without tune as she stitches a tear in her apron. You stare at her hands, the way they move without thinking, the way they fold cloth like it's a prayer. You wonder what the wall sees when it looks at her, whether it knows how many winters her fingers have endured, whether it remembers the first time she bent over that same needle, crying, stitching a shroud. You close your eyes and lean further into the timber. It groans under your weight, but holds. It always holds. You've seen other huts fall, roofs collapse, walls buckle under snow, but not this one, not yet. Maybe it's the way it was built. Maybe it's the way you've treated it, or maybe it's just stubborn, like you. You wonder how long it will last, if it will still be here when you're gone, if someone else will sit where you sit, scratch where you scratch, whisper names into the same grain in the wood. You imagine a child pressing their face to the wall and asking it questions. Where did she go? Why doesn't anyone talk about her? And the wall won't answer, but it will know. You think about all the people who've pressed themselves against this spot, searching for something solid, something that didn't flinch. You press harder, feel the chill settle into your bones. It's not unkind, it's honest. You've come to love this honesty the way the wall never pretends to be warm. Never promises more than it can give. It's strong. It's silent. It remembers. That's more than most things. You open your eyes and look at the cracks in the plaster. Each one a river, a line, a path leading nowhere. You follow them with your eyes. Count them, lose track. Start again. It's a ritual now. You find new ones each week. Time leaves its mark even when no one else does. You reach out and press your palm flat against the wood. It's rough, cold, real. You press your head against it too. Close your eyes. Listen. The hut doesn't speak, but it holds you. And that's enough. You wake, not with a start, but with a stiffness. The kind that seeps into the joints like damp into stone. Morning doesn't announce itself in the hut, it leaks in, thin and gray, through the spaces between the slats, through the folds of the thatch, through the breath of those already stirring. You don't open your eyes at first. You don't need to. You know what you'll see, the same sagging beams, the same smoke-shadowed roof, The same straw scattered beneath you like failed intentions. The same faces, slack with sleep or tight with worry, arranged in the usual places, as if no one ever truly moves. You shift, and the ache in your back greets you like an old acquaintance present, familiar, unwelcome. You sit up slowly, careful not to jostle the child curled near your feet, careful not to disturb the goat that somehow wedged herself between your mother and the wall again. Your hand finds your own knee, stiff as a hinge, and you rub it absently, eyes still not quite open, mind still fogged. You think of the dream, you almost remember something about light, too much of it, and no smoke, but even as you try to hold on to it, it slips away, replaced by the scraping of a wooden bowl, the hollow thump of bare feet on packed earth, the wet cough from the corner that no one will mention until they have to. The baby starts crying. No one moves immediately. There's always a moment of stillness, a communal bargaining with reality, before the day officially begins. Your mother, as always, breaks it. She lifts the child, murmuring something low and tender. Though her face remains unreadable, she has long since mastered the art of affection without hope. Someone opens the door. The air that enters isn't fresh, it's too heavy, too still, but it's new, and that's enough to mark the hour. You pull your cloak tighter, rising unsteadily. The straw clings to you. It always does. Your skin itches from it. Your clothes reek of it. And still it feels more like a home than anything else. The cold creeps in like a reminder. The fire is out again. No surprise. Someone will have to fetch wood. Maybe you, maybe not. Maybe today is the day your ankle doesn't work, or your hunger becomes too loud to ignore. You glance at the others. They're already moving in slow rhythm, your father bending stiffly to relight the hearth, your brother yawning like his jaw might crack, your sister washing her face with water that bites. The same faces, the same motions. It would be easy to think nothing changes here, but it does, subtly, quietly, in the way your uncle no longer rises first, in the way the thatch above your bed now leaks onto your chest instead of your feet, in the way the goat's ribs show a little more each week, in the way your mother no longer sings while stirring the pot. These are the changes no one names. You walk outside. The light is thin, brittle as old parchment, and the sky is the color of cold soup. You breathe it in, because you must, and carry the bucket to the stream again, because someone always has to. The path is slick, the mud clings, the bucket swings. By the time you return, your hands are red and stiff and useless, but the hut is awake. The smoke curls lazily from the roof hole now, a thin signal of life, of something like civilization. You step back inside and are greeted not with thanks, but with the usual silence, heavy and ritualistic. You pour the water without spilling, you sit without speaking. Your sister braids her hair with the same red thread, worn thin now, nearly snapping. Your brother coughs into his sleeve. You pretend not to notice the color. The goat whines. You scratch your ankle. The bread from yesterday is gone. What's left is root soup again, but it's hot, and that makes it enough. You eat in silence, chewing slowly, not for flavor, but to delay hunger's return. When the bowl is empty, you stare into it, not with longing, but with acceptance. It is what it is. You glance around. The hut is full, but it feels hollow, or maybe you're the hollow one. You wonder, quietly, if anyone else feels it, if anyone else looks at the walls and hears not creaks, but echoes, if anyone else thinks that sleep is a rehearsal for something darker. No one says these things aloud. There's no space for them, not with the pot to scrub, the wood to fetch, the baby to quiet, the goat to feed, the bites to scratch, the corners to patch, the day to endure. You sit by the fire and stare into the flames until they blur. The warmth reaches only your knees, but it's something. You press your fingers close until they sting. Then you pull back. You listen. Outside, the wind picks up again, whistling low and strange through the gaps in the walls. Inside, your family speaks in murmurs, tasks whispered like prayers. Someone laughs short, dry, Surprised by itself, it dies quickly. You smile anyway. It's enough. Later, you'll lie back down. You'll curl into the straw, scratch at your skin, breathe in the smoke, and wonder again if you'll wake. And when you do, because you always do, you'll open your eyes and look at the same beams, hear the same coughing, smell the same fire, and remind yourself that waking up is enough. That being here, inside this breathless hut, with its ghosts and its straw and its memory-heavy walls, is a kind of survival. Not rest, not peace, but survival. You close your eyes and press your hand to the floor, feeling the packed earth beneath your palm, cold, ancient, and steady. You whisper nothing. You ask for nothing. You simply lie still. The hut holds you like it always has, and now everything slows. The fire no longer crackles, it breathes. The straw no longer pricks, it yields. Even the wind seems to hush, drifting past the hut like a memory without urgency. You lie there, still, not from fear or fatigue, but from something quieter, something that feels almost like surrender, though not defeat. Your limbs, once tense and alert, have softened into the floor. Your breath comes slower now, warm against the wool, matching the hush of the others around you. There's no need to speak. Nothing needs naming here. The aches have dulled. The hunger, for now, has gone quiet. The sounds that once seemed sharp wood, groaning, roof dripping, feet shifting, now feel like part of a lullaby too old to remember the words. The walls no longer press in, they hold. The cold no longer bites, it simply exists. The darkness, which once swallowed the corners of the room, now settles like a blanket over all of you. Not empty, but full of every breath, every silence, every life this hut has ever kept. You let it cradle you. You feel yourself dissolving into it, not disappearing, just becoming part of the rhythm, part of the night, part of something older than sleep. No more movement now, no more thought, just warmth where it matters most at your chest, where your heart, against all odds, still beats.